Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
So how embarrassed were you by the reports that universal credit is going to cost some families £200 a month?
Well, the issue around universal credit, and this is an issue we had back with tax credits 2 years ago, is there is still a structural problem with the fact that taxpayers pay for people to stay on 16 hours a week.
Is it acceptable for families on benefits to have to lose another £200 a month?
No, because what we're giving is the opportunity for this taper benefit to come in so that there won't be a cliff edge and actually they can take on other forms of work without losing the benefit automatically.
I think more damning of your record is that half of disabled people in this country are reckoned to have their human rights being ignored as we speak. And I have disabled friends who are being denied their benefit. I have friends who have been switched over to universal credit who cannot meet their bills right now. And it's a bit thick, I think, for the governing party to just sit here and say, well, it's coming up roses.
No, because you can't just have the situation of just coming up with individual scenarios without admitting that there are more people in work than ever before, there are more mothers in work than ever before, there are more disabled people in work than ever before. Who's to turn around and say that disabled people don't want to work? And actually giving people those opportunities in life is absolutely what the Conservative Party is about. It's why we've set up a policy commission that I'm leading. We're going around the country to look at actually how we can renew in government. There's a challenge after 8 years.
And Conservatives and the government always use the measure of the number of people in work. But what about the number of people in in-work poverty?
Well, this is clearly, an issue that we will be looking at going forward for the future. The fact is that more people are in work. In my constituency,
and in work poverty.
Well, people are
just say it.
No,
more
because people are far more in poverty.
Why don't you say it?
No, because actually it's much better to have a job and a purpose in life than being on the dole. And in my constituency,
oh my God!
No,
really?
I'm sorry.
Let him finish, and then I'll come to you.
You can come in, but actually, the truth is that every single Labour government always has higher levels of unemployment after it finishes that period in power. In my constituency, there are 1,500 people out of work with no hope whatsoever. That has come down, and we have the historic rate of low unemployment compared to back to 1971.
Let Ash
respond. Turn around and say that that's not a good thing.
I mean, I think it's insulting, in fact, to appeal to the inherent dignity of work when some people are having to work multiple part-time jobs and they're still having to make up the shortfall in their income with credit card debt. There's no dignity in that. And if you'd have given a serious answer about how you're going to get people, how you're going to get corporations to pay people more, then I would have some time to listen to you.
And what about the living wage?
So the living wage, I think, has to be a genuine living wage, or a wage that you can live on, which it isn't at the moment.
The national wage now ensures that people on it have £2,000 more in their pocket compared to 2016. You can't turn around and say that's not a good thing. In terms of looking at what we're trying to do to generate an economy that will actually bring more money into public services, cutting corporation taxes raised £19 billion, which actually goes more into the NHS and schools. We're actually having a productive economy compared to a Labour government that sort of crashed the economy and actually ensured that more people
are actually not having a productive economy. We've got some of the worst productivity in Europe.
What would you do about it? I mean, literally,
all right, well, let's hear that.
What would you raising taxes?
Well, what would you do?
Putting that on the backs of working class people.
Of course, you are going to raise taxes to invest in the NHS too. But what would you do? What should be done in order to alleviate problems for disabled people and in-work poverty?
So, I mean, this is actually where I think the Labour manifesto did not go anywhere near far enough. They've actually been very quiet on issues of welfare, and I think that's a real shame. They need to look seriously at lifting the benefit cap. I think that they need to pour investment into health and social care, and I think the other thing that they need to look at in terms of addressing this crisis in productivity is something like a 4-day week.
All right, and that has been raised by Francis O'Grady.
I've got skin in the game on this. I had 2 disabled parents and grew up on a council estate, and there's something in that. And I'm not saying that every Conservative policy has been flawless, but there was certainly a case with my mum that there was a point with disability where it didn't make sense to go to work on any level, and the level of remuneration would have surprised some people, I think. And you talk about, Tories do have this tendency, sometimes it's a sledgehammer to crack a nut, but there's a part of me as a voter that admires people doing something rather than nothing.
All right.
Now, it was a big idea launched by the former Conservative leader Ian Duncan Smith in the early years of the coalition government that took power in 2010. Universal credit was the reform to end all reforms, merging 6 working age benefits into one, simplifying the system and doing so in a way that's designed to ensure that anyone working or working more hours is better off than they would be working less. Well, it was a big idea, but as it has rolled out, it's become associated with administrative cock-ups, with intentional delays in payments and cuts in benefits, to the point that Esther McVeigh, the latest DWP secretary to struggle with it, has reportedly warned the Cabinet that it involves £200 monthly cuts to many poor households' incomes. And John McDonnell has said Labour wants to scrap it. Well, Well, with Theresa May heralding the end of austerity up to a point, what's the future for universal credit? Our political editor Nick Watt reports.
A new era for a rejuvenated Theresa May has opened as the Prime Minister courts Labour voters with a pledge to end the era of austerity.
This is a moment of opportunity for our party to champion decency in our politics, to be the moderate, patriotic government this country needs, to be a party not for the few, not even for the many, but for everyone who works hard and plays by the rules.
But Theresa May's new role as the guardian of the post-austerity world is slamming into a highly controversial piece of political baggage: universal credit, the most ambitious welfare reform in a generation. Millions of claimants on current benefits or tax credits are due to start transferring to the new system from next April. Dreamt up in opposition by the former Tory leader Ian Duncan Smith, the reform is designed to transform the world of work for low-income workers by rolling 6 in-work and out-of-work benefits into one system, and rewarding people for working longer hours by ensuring that increases in take-home pay are not hit by cuts to benefits. But universal credit has been beset by delays. Now the Work and Pensions Secretary Esther McVeigh is saying that some new claimants will be worse off by £2,400 a year than they would have been on existing benefits. Labour is saying universal credit is unsustainable.
It is demeaning, demoralising, dispiriting. It seems to be designed to crush people. And I'm a referral agent for Ealing Food Bank. Didn't used to be in 2015, but I was given by them sort of 2 rubber-banded piles of these vouchers that I can distribute to people. And we're down to our last handful now. I think the office said there's half a dozen of them. They may be gone by my Friday surgery.
The manager of one food bank has seen a dramatic increase in demand since universal credit was rolled out in her area.
They're really struggling and they're really concerned. You know, those with families, you know, they feel really vulnerable. They've got their children to look after and, yeah, they're just really struggling to get by.
The government seems remarkably shy about explaining its flagship welfare reform. One former cabinet minister told Newsnight that universal credit is a noble idea that can succeed. But this MP said problems arose when the genuine idealism of Ian Duncan Smith came into contact with the genuine desire of George Osborne to impose cuts on welfare, thereby undermining universal credit. A think tank established by Ian Duncan Smith believes the Osborne cuts have had a lasting effect.
I mean, going back to 2015, when the cuts came in, there will be people who lose out as a result, particularly coming in new. If you're coming across from the old system, you are protected. If you're coming in fresh to the system, you will lose out, and that is a result of the 2015 cuts. And that has been something that people have campaigned on for the last 3 years. And in time, I hope that maybe we will see money reinvested. But actually, if you put enough petrol in the engine, this is a really good engine. This is an engine that everyone agreed on when it first came out. Actually, it will see more people in work. It has already seen more people in work. But it's just making sure that it's tweaked along the way and it has enough petrol in it.
One leading economist believes universal credit has strong upsides, though it is fraught with political danger.
The big problem with universal credit is that it's a very, very large, significant change to our benefit system affecting millions of people that's taking place at exactly the same time as we are cutting the generosity of that system. And the combination of that huge change with those big cuts to benefits is potentially toxic.
Theresa May is rebranding her party as a champion of centre-ground politics for the world beyond Brexit. She will be hoping that totemic ideas conceived in the past do not scupper the journey.
Nick Watt. Well, we asked the government for an interview to discuss the whole thing, but they declined. However, I am joined now from Cambridgeshire by the Conservative MP Heidi Allen, who's a member of the House of Commons Work and Pensions Select Committee. Very good evening to you. Are you in the camp that doesn't like universal credit or just thinks it's been done on the cheap?
I'm in the camp like pretty much everybody really, including the majority of the poverty fighting charities like Trust, etc., in saying that universal credit will be a fantastic system. It will transform people's lives and get them into work. But I'm also of the camp, as I have been since I first sat on the Select Committee, saying that there are things that we need to do to improve it, to make it that poverty fighting machine that it deserves to be, because its heart was ripped out, as you've already alluded to, in budget cuts, and that's the money, the petrol we need to put back into the system.
Right. So, now we'd always ask a Labour politician this, if they came on and said they want more money spent on it. What would you support as a way of putting more money in? Do you want higher taxes or just higher borrowing? Or do you want cuts in other spending?
Well, it's partly a circular argument. So, first and foremost, I don't think, some of the headline figures going around about £200 loss a week for claimants. I don't think the problem is as big as that, actually. But what we do need to do is focus on a couple of groups that are severely disadvantaged, which are single parents looking to move into work and second earners. Now, both of those are the sorts of people we really want to get into work because they will start generating tax. And they're the two groups that are more disadvantaged in the system than any other. So yes, I can't pretend it won't cost money. For me, if that in the interim meant putting taxes up, I would do that. But actually, I think you'll find that they would pay for themselves very quickly because it's the engine, if you like. If we can't keep the engine ticking over at the lower end of the economy, the low-paid work, then the whole economy will suffer. So it would cost around about £2.5 billion to restore work allowances to where they should be for single parents and second earners. But I think economically we'd see the reward of that very quickly.
Yeah, no, so it may not cost £2.5 billion, but that would certainly be the estimate. The really interesting thing you said in that quite long answer, I thought, was that you really do support putting up taxes, because that actually is, it seems, where the Conservative Party's going, that the sort of the long years of just driving public spending down, that mood has gone, and you're happy to say you're happy to see taxes go up to pay for better public services and welfare.
Well, I think the world that we live in now is very different from the one 20 or 30 years ago. People very honestly now accept we're all living longer. The NHS will need that additional funding to come from somewhere. And people are pragmatic about that. You can't create public services out of thin air. They need to be paid for. And we've come a long way in controlling our economy and making the debt and the deficit more manageable, but we do need to release those purse strings because otherwise we risk stagnating. And that's for me why the investment in universal credit is so important, because we need to keep the economy ticking over by single parents, second earners going into work. Without the right support, we risk them not going to work at all.
OK, let me just ask you one last one, because you were elected MP for the Conservatives in 2015. In that election campaign, your party campaigned that it was going to cut welfare by £12 billion. Everybody said you can't do it without penalising the poor. George Osborne said, trust us, we can do it, we've done it before, we'll do it again. Where did you think, when you were elected on that manifesto, where did you think the money was going to come from to cut welfare by £12 billion, or did you never believe it either?
Let's just say I had my wake-up call when I made my maiden speech in the October of 2015, which was the moment of the tax credit U-turn, if you like. I understood that I think it was a promise too far and that it would potentially do more damage and more harm than good. And since then, as I've learnt more and more about universal credit, and other members of all sides of the House have, I think it's that balance point. The system does work really well, but it needs to be funded properly.
Heidi Allen, thanks very much for joining us. Thank you. Thanks.